Welcome to Truman's Town Hall with your host, Matt Truman. Welcome to Truman's Town Hall with...
Hey, everybody, it's Matt Truman, Truman's Town Hall. I'm with Waylon, the Red Rooster of the Gospel Message. Today, we have a great live broadcast. Tonight, we are bringing you Marshall Usher and Shannon Walker, who are running for governor and lieutenant governor in the state of Ohio as write-in candidates. Gentlemen, thank you for joining our podcast tonight.
Thank you for having us. I'm excited to be here.
So first thing I got to ask is, you're from Pennsylvania, right, Mr. Usher?
That's right.
Are you a Steelers fan?
I am a Steelers fan.
Oh, Lord. All right. I guess we're done, guys.
Although,
right.
after that performance today, I don't know if I'll still play that. But yes, I definitely grew up a Steelers fan.
That's awesome. Okay, so, guys, let's start with Mr. Walker. Tell us a little bit about yourself and, you know, who you are, where you're from, and all that good stuff.
Well, I'm Shannon Walker. I'm from Meigs County, Ohio, right on the river, just south of Athens. Ex-law enforcement. I was a police officer for about 5 years, and I left that, went into corrections for a few years. Ended up having a back injury, had to have surgery after that. I couldn't go back to it, so I had done an apprenticeship in tattooing and ended up opening my own tattoo studio about 6-7 years ago.
Nice.
Wow.
Thank you. Mr. Usher, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I did grow up south of Pittsburgh. It was a pretty interesting upbringing. I was raised by a single mom who also happened to be a former Marine. So discipline and just doing the right thing because it was the right thing to do, not because someone was looking over your shoulder, was something that my sister and I were just raised around. And so that's really one of the reasons we decided to jump into this was, there was no way that I could bring myself to vote for either of the two choices. And, whenever you want, you see something wrong, you can either sit back and not do anything about it and keep your mouth shut, or you can step up and do something about it. And, because of that, here we are.
Awesome. So, I guess the first question I'd want to ask is, why governor? Why not like Secretary of State or something local? What sparked your interest to go straight for governor and lieutenant governor?
That's a great question. So really it was, we had built a network. So let me back up a step. So the way I met Shannon was volunteering with the Joe Blystone campaign. And, I started with the campaign in October of last year. Started running signs, handing out T-shirts, and quickly realized that, while I could really get behind Joe's platform, he needed help translating that platform into actionable policy. So I sat down and took everything I heard him talking about, online, on the trail, and boiled it down into the Blystone plan for Ohio. So there were really three buckets of things that you could do, right? So here, there were a couple things that he could do on day one because he already had the law on his side. So whether he could take action through executive fiat. There were a handful of bills that were going through the legislature. And, we said, okay, here are a couple that we can get behind as is. There's some others that we'd like to see some minor changes to, but they align with the platform. So let's work with our partners in the legislature and see if we can get these through. And then there were a couple of things that, are important to Ohioans and we didn't really know enough about. So we were going to form a 90-day commission, go out, do the research, come back, present the, both sides of the argument, and make an informed decision there. So, it was really that exposure to, the broader platform, looking at, that was kind of what got me into it. And then the real reason was, after Joe was unsuccessful, I think like a lot of other patriots around the state, my plan B was Neil Peterson. And after Neil didn't make it on the ballot, then, you kind of look around and say, well, I'm not going to vote for either of those two. And we had the opportunity, the platform, and we jumped in to give a lot of folks in Ohio another option. A lot of folks we talked to weren't going to vote, and I said, instead of to me, not voting is just sitting back and taking it. And
right.
Having been raised with the background that I was, that's just not in my DNA. So we approached a handful of folks that had more money and more name recognition than us to try to get them to run, and for very good, valid reasons, they either couldn't or wouldn't. And at the end of the day, you either step up and do something about it, or you shut your mouth and stop complaining. And we decided that we were going to step up and try and do something about it.
Awesome, Mr. Walker. What do you feel? What's driving you to do this?
Well, being a small business owner, Dewine stepped in and shut a bunch of small businesses down. I closed for about 3 weeks and then reopened. They threatened to fine me, threatened me with jail time. I basically told them go ahead, and when the prosecutor's office reopened, everything was dismissed. He really crossed my red line by shutting the state down, killing small businesses, letting the big businesses flourish. Now he claims he never shut down churches, but he wasn't allowed to have gatherings of more than 10 people. I don't know many churches that only have 9 people that show up for church on Sunday morning or Sunday evening or Wednesday night.
Right.
He done a lot wrong during the COVID pandemic, and I just that was the end of it for me. That's when I decided to start looking for a candidate to get behind. I found Joe about 3 weeks after he signed on, went to the farm, met him, came home, designed signs and stuff for him, took him back up the next weekend, and we was off to the races from there. Like Marshall said, I already had another candidate when he fell through. We was getting our stuff ducks in a row to start back in Peterson, and then he fell through. So
yeah.
We can't ask other people to jump up and do this if we ain't willing to step in and do it ourselves.
Yeah.
Nice. So you designed Mr. Blystone's signs?
Yes.
Oh,
I came home. I talked to
Joe. I saw those
and
everywhere. All right.
Yeah, I came home and I talked to Joe, and he said he thought it was too early. So I went ahead and designed them, ordered a few of them, took them back up to him, and they was gone within an hour that day. And he called me back and said, how soon can we get more?
Yeah, those were awesome.
Off to the races.
All right. So I'm going to ask both of y'all this. If you could paint a picture for the future of Ohio, what would it look like? I know on the website, I will slap that up there real quick. Sunshine Plan is something that's you guys have developed, so, or you're looking at. So tell us what kind of a Ohio we would have under Usher Walker.
So I like to say it would look a lot like Florida with a lot more snow. But the good thing is we don't have to come up with the best ideas. We have conservative leaders across the country that we can look to and take the ideas that they've successfully implemented. And Ron Desantis has been kind enough to actually write it down and call it the Desantis Playbook. Now, I tell people on the road that no team can pick up another team's playbook and just run it verbatim. So, we looked at the programs, looked at, the specifics that he put in place and adopted what we could and adapted what didn't quite fit exactly and came up with this 10-pillar plan that I believe will, the one theme that you'll see consistent across both, the DeSantis plan and ours is the theme of restoring the freedoms that we've lost over the last few years, putting our children first in terms of, ending abortion, making sure that they are educated, not indoctrinated, and really standing up for medical freedom. The fact that we have a Republican supermajority in this state and we couldn't even get a medical freedom bill out of committee, that's an indictment on all of those so-called Republicans that had a hand in that. So
yes,
those are some of the big tenets. One of the others that everyone is concerned about right now is the safety of their streets. Whether it be from repeat violent offenders or the inflow of illegals and narcotics. One of the differences that you'll see with our platform, we are talking about fentanyl in a way that I don't think others are. I believe in drug dealers facing capital punishment in Ohio. So if you sell methamphetamine, you sell opioids that kill somebody, you should be eligible for capital punishment. I look at fentanyl differently. If I showed up at in downtown and I had a bag of anything, of something, and I said, there's enough chemical in this bag to kill however many people, you name it, it's a lot. And just by getting a very small amount in you, it will kill you. That would be classified as a weapon of mass destruction. I want to see people that are putting fentanyl on our streets addressed like we would address any other weapon of mass destruction if it was unleashed on our people. It's coming in from China. We know that, and I will tell you that you will have a governor that's going to put an end to it in our state. One of the other opportunities that we have is to attract a lot of the law enforcement that are fleeing a lot of these other woke cities. One of the couple things that Florida has done is set a mandatory or a minimum salary of $60,000 for law enforcement coming in. I would love to see grants made available. It costs about $7,000 or $8,000 for an officer coming in from another state to study and pass all of the state-specific exams. So we want to remove that barrier. And then, one of the other big things is we believe that having corrections officers and law enforcement, firefighters, and other first responders, that we believe it's a good idea for them to live in their district. So we would love to extend the homestead exemption to cover all of our first responders. Make it easy for them to buy homes and live in the districts with the people they serve. So those are just a handful. One thing that I can also promise is that we will never infringe on your Second Amendment rights. One of the two executive orders that I would plan on signing on day one, the first would be the executive order on medical freedom. So outlawing any mandatory or compulsory participation in any healthcare system. Read Article 20 or Section 1, Article 21 of the Ohio Constitution. We already have the authority to do that. We need a governor that will stand up and have the guts to do it. But the other one will be establishing Ohio as a Second Amendment sanctuary state. So no police powers granted to the state by the federal government will be used to enforce any unconstitutional gun laws. So things like the so-called assault weapons ban, universal background checks. None of that will happen in Ohio. And I'm sure you guys are aware that,
did you see how the credit card companies are looking to?
I was just going to bring that up. I said, I'm sure you guys are aware, but maybe your viewers aren't. Yeah, the credit card companies, they came up with a merchant code that allows them to track ammunition and firearm purchases. So in effect, creating a private gun registry. So yeah, we need to push legislation that won't allow that to happen in Ohio.
Excellent. Rooster, you got a question? You had something, bud.
Well, I do. I'm lagging real bad. Can you guys hear me at least?
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you? Okay. What would be the first thing, the big changes you would make to the state budget? Is there anything in particular that you would do immediately?
So there's a couple things. One, I think if you look at the capital budget, there's a lot of money that's being spent on things that I don't think a lot of us would make priority. And what I mean by that is, $23 million to being spent on dorm facelifts. That's the line item, facelifts for Ohio University or Ohio State. There's another $20 million plus allocation for dorm refurbishments, other places. $16 million for FC Cincinnati to build a new soccer field. Listen, when times are great, I want our kids to have nice dorms and nice soccer fields, but not before our veterans have adequate veterans homes. For instance, a lot of folks don't know that we only have 2 VA homes in the state. One in up by Cleveland, one in Georgetown, and both of them were built on gifted land. So there's no strategy around where they were placed. And if you have a veteran that is anywhere from Columbus to the Southwest, it could be 2.5, 3 hours to get grandma or grandpa into a veteran's home. So that would be one thing, is reallocating a lot of that capital budget from a lot of the dorm refurbishments or cosmetic things. we didn't touch things like HVAC repairs or roofing repairs. Those things you need. But I'm sorry, I have a problem with spending 200+ million on dorm refurbishments whenever we can build 3 VA homes over the next 3 years for 250 million.
I'm with you 100%. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, not to mention these colleges have billion-dollar coffers sitting around, and they don't have to match this money dollar for dollar. They don't have to do anything. State's just throwing it at them.
And I'm a firm believer in open markets, right? So one of the other changes is, instead of directly funding universities, I would love to see the scholarship pool made available to Ohio students, extremely, much larger. Then if Ohio State has the best value for our students' dollar and they get the students, then they'll have enough money to go refurbish their dorms however they want. But the direct funding to the universities, I think that I would love to see that mechanism changed right there as well.
Right. That sounds good. A lot of things that happened recently with Hurricane Ian. So I live out here in Beaver Creek. I lived out in Texas during the time of the tornado, but there's tornadoes, there's floods all over Ohio. How do you guys respond to a statewide emergency? What would be your plan to go after something like that? Have you thought about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the I think the biggest things that should keep governors up at night is how you respond to that kind of stuff. And again, I would look to our friends in the South, whether that's Greg Abbott or Ron DeSantis. And the one thing that you will learn from there, the one thing I've learned from my business career, is you put capable people in place. Your job as a leader is to remove the hurdles, and you let them go do their job. And that's exactly what we would do. One of the questions, I love this. I've gotten a couple of times now out on the trail is, having not been in politics, how are you going to appoint all of these positions? You don't know enough people. And it makes me laugh. And it's like, I would hire them just like we do in business. We would look at resumes. We would make sure that they were qualified. We would make sure that they were thinking about the objectives the same way we were. And then we would hire them.
Right. Yeah. It sounds like a complicated question, but it's like you said, it's pretty simple. You hire them. Exactly. All right. So a lot of politicians seem not to live in reality, for me anyway. I'm not a big fan of politicians. How do you guys, to me, and I've been watching the videos, the interviews, I saw you speak out there in Brookville. You guys seem like men for the people. How do you get into, so you're going to win as governor and lieutenant governor. So how do you maintain being men of the people and still, navigate the political waters, if you will?
Go ahead. You want to jump on that one, Shannon, first?
To me, it's pretty simple. You put the people's interest first over the political interest. I mean, we're not getting into this to make careers out of it. If at the end of 4 years people still want us and we'll still be here, but for us, it's about the people. We're tired of watching the people get left behind.
Yeah,
that's exactly it. I mean, at the end of the day, I've got a day job. I've got 3 kids and a wife, and I'm very happy coaching soccer and raising my kids. And but you look around the state and you see the condition that it's in and the direction it's going, and then at some point, guys like us look around and say, "All right, hold my beer. I'll be back. We've got some work to do."
Yep.
And it's staying grounded is not going to be a problem. I mean, it's what you see is what you get. I'm a pretty transparent guy, and I don't see anything changing that.
Nope.
Waylon's not. He's pretty fake. I don't know about him.
My screen is completely froze. I'm like a 20-minute delay, so you guys will just have to forgive me on that. I do got a question though. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, we can hear you, okay. Waylon.
I'm just looking at it. I'm froze. It's weird. Anyway,
you're drinking water.
That was 20 seconds ago. I know you mentioned the vaccines earlier and different things about Dewine and the shutdowns. When you're talking about the medical freedom, you're talking about no vaccine forced as far as the COVID vaccine, right? Nothing forced. What about our National Guard?
No,
any vaccine for any people, and the National Guard is tough because once they deploy, they fall under the federal jurisdiction, so the governor loses control over
Article 10.
Yeah, but I am telling the thing. There's and I'm not for or against the vaccine. Personally, I'm for making your own choice about the vaccine, and you should not be forced to put anything in your body, let alone an experimental vaccine, without your informed consent. And I think everybody knows that whenever you ask for informed consent on the COVID vaccine specifically, you would open up that big page and it was blank. That's a problem. So there's no way that I'm going to force people to take a leap of faith on a drug that doesn't have informed consent. No way.
There's a question from the audience, if y'all don't mind. What is your stance on sex education in the school system? Does it have a place in schools? Now, I do know, because I've been reading up on House Bill 722, but I'll let y'all go after that question if you want.
So go ahead, Shannon. Yeah.
Sex education has a place in school if it's sex education like it was taught 20 years ago. But this neutral gender and all this other stuff has no place in school. That's not a discussion for any teacher to be having with anybody's child. That's a discussion for the parent to have with the children.
That's what I'm talking about. You can't see me, but I'm double fist bumping right now.
Yeah.
I'm just away.
If you're having that kind of talk with a child in school about taking medications and stuff, change their gender, you don't need to be a teacher. You should be on a sexual predator list somewhere.
There you go.
Amen. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for the question, Billy. So what's your opinion on the Ohio Republican Party? Is the leadership moving to the left, the party as a whole? I ask this because of all the extreme edicts. Like, never in my life did I think a Republican governor, which, you know what, if you don't mind, I'm gonna play something here real quick, because we were talking earlier about closing Mr. Walker's business now, and this goes hand in hand with that.
This morning, pretty early, I started getting some emails and texts from people in different locations in Ohio. And each one that sent me something, once actually sent a picture, were concerned about the crowded bars in their area last night. We talked about, and we've set a limit of 100 people. And we've talked a lot in the last few days about social distancing and the necessity of people remaining apart from each other, at least 6 feet. We also are learning, and we continue to learn as this moves forward, but how contagious this coronavirus is. Several things I've read indicate it's twice as contagious as the flu. We also know that it's much, much, much more deadlier than the flu. So this social distancing is absolutely vitally important. After looking at this picture, but also hearing from people, and literally these were from the Mahoning Valley to Cleveland to Southern Ohio, and all the same story. The concern also that I have, and that the people who are contacting me, is that one of our happier days of the year, St. Patrick's Day, is coming up. And we're 2 days away from St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day, when people get together and crowd into bars. And so based upon all of this, and based upon the fact of where we are at this point, in this pandemic. We are literally at a crucial stage. Dr. Acton will be signing an order that all bars in the state and all restaurants will close at 9 o'clock tonight. How long this order will be in effect, we don't frankly know.
All right. What's you guys' reaction to that? I mean, people forget that was Mike Dewine. People are forgetting that was Mike Dewine. So I wanted to remind them. What do you guys think?
It's crazy. I mean, there's so many things to unpack there. One is go back to the flu of 1918, right? So Mike DeWine decides to shut down an entire industry in the state because he got a couple emails. Yeah. Well, if he wants to do some reading, why doesn't he go back and read the history of the flu of 1918 and do some reading on some of the contraptions that they tried to put over their face to try and stop the spread of that flu? And go back and look at Anthony Fauci whenever he was first asked about, are we going to be running around as a society with masks on our face? And he laughed. He laughed at that question in the beginning of this thing. So
he sure did.
If Mike wants to go back and do some research, I would advise him to stop being selective on the research that he does, and let's look at the breadth of that. So that's one thing. Two, we would never shut down an industry or a state. The message coming out, the one thing I'll give him is we didn't know at the beginning. We didn't really know. So our message would have been, hey, we're adults. Let's be careful. Let's be thoughtful, but go live your lives, and again, that should be the message: is do your own research, make your own decisions, then make the decisions that are best for you. We have gotten just so far away from individual rights and individual freedoms. It's amazing what people will give up for a bit of perceived safety. And that's all it was. And if you've read any of the history books about the pandemics of the past, that's exactly how it plays out. Is you trade your safety for
security,
the government coming
Freedoms.
in to help. For your freedom. And we've seen that play out how many times before, and it won't happen on our watch.
What do you say, Mr. Walker? When you watch old clips, I think that clip was like 2 years ago, and then what we see now.
Oh, I'm right there with Marshall. I mean, it's all about the freedom of individual choice. It's up to the government to secure your freedoms, not protect your safety. I mean, it's not their responsibility to close down businesses and kill small businesses. I mean, I couldn't have 3 clients in my tattoo shop, but Lowe's could have 200 people running around.
Right.
That itself shows you it had nothing to do with public safety. Because if you're going to leave the big box stores open where hundreds of people pass through their day, that's not safety. That's about doing nothing more than hurting the small businesses and the middle class.
Right.
Yeah.
Waylon, did you have something?
Well, again, I apologize for the delay. At least you can hear me. I was celebrating over what one of you said earlier, throwing my hands up, and it showed up 45 seconds later. So at least you can hear me. Anyway, would you ever, and this goes to both of you, would you ever entertain the idea of making Ohio a sanctuary state for illegal immigrants?
Absolutely not.
Okay, good. That's huge.
Actually, one of the first posts that we made after we announced, one of the articles broke in the newspaper about the busing to one of the sanctuary cities, and I'm sorry, it was the Martha Vineyard. It was the Martha's Vineyard trip, and I laughed. I love the idea. My only issue is Martha's Vineyard is a little bit too close to Ohio, so we looked up Nancy Pelosi's address in San Francisco, and that's where we would start to send buses of any illegals that we caught in Ohio. So right down to her office.
Well, California's a sanctuary state, I think.
There
I
you
think
go.
Gavin Newsom loves it.
Welcome with open arms.
Yeah.
Now,
We will trade them our illegals for their vets.
There you go.
there you go. Just a little follow-up on that. What about in Ohio with illegal immigrants as far as the housing, them having to survive, to work?
Listen, I believe that we should make it hard for people that came into this company illegally to survive. They should not be here illegally. And I believe that you have to have an ID for pretty much everything that you want to do in this state, and to not have an ID to vote, that's crazy. That the fact that we're even talking about that as a constitutional amendment on the upcoming election, but.
Right.
And don't think that I am inhumane by taking that. What's inhumane is inviting them here without a support system to for them to come into. But no, I don't believe that they should be taking jobs from Americans. They shouldn't be taking health care. No, we should be making it difficult for them to live here.
Right. Let's see here. Here's something that bothers me, and I don't know if it bothers you guys. When folks say there's a lot of talk about democracy, that undermines our democracy, all this stuff. It bothers me because we live in a republic. Does that bother you as much as it bothers me?
It does. I mean, it's an indictment, right, of kind of where their knowledge of the system. We are a representative republic for a reason. The Electoral College exists for a reason. Just go read the Federalist Papers, do your homework. I mean, I don't know. That's what I said. It's just it's frustrating, but it's just kind of at least the level that you're starting that conversation on.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of folks trying to drive that because they look over a lot of liberals. Okay, I love the liberals. But a lot of them look to Europe and they feel like, hey, I want that European model here in America. So a lot of them are democracies. So we're just going to drive that word democracy until we have something that we want, which is a European democracy. Well, no, we're a republic for a reason here in the United States. And that's because we left Europe a while back. Anyway. That's my
Europe's
thought on
socialist democracy. And believe me, I worked for Rolls-Royce for a handful of years. I spent quite a bit of time in the UK. I will tell you that is not the health system I want. That is not the form of government that I want. So, I'm perfectly happy with our representative republic.
What are some of the things that you experienced with that?
So fortunately, I never had to enter into the public health system for an injury or whatnot. But just colleagues waiting months for elective surgeries. You want to get them done at the beginning of the year because at the end of the year the health system runs out of money and it's tough to get them scheduled. So we are the richest, most wealthy country in the world. Like that is not the system that we should have. Right.
So I got another one here. I've essentially given up on mainstream media. That's me. I look to different outlets. I'll watch mainstream media just as the know what your enemy does kind of thing. But it's always the same stories. The mainstream media, always the same stories being delivered in a slightly different way. They twist it up no matter who it is. One of the most important things is the Russia and Ukraine war that's happening right now. But the mainstream media continues to push this Russia narrative, kind of like they did with Trump. The current administrations, I feel, want to go to war with Russia. The mainstream media pushed WMDs in Iraq. Turned out they found a little yellow cake uranium, they said. But there were no WMDs. So now they're pushing war with Ukraine and Russia. As governor and lieutenant governor, how would you guys react to that?
Man, we better prepare. Everything from preparing for disaster to preparing energy security. Because I agree. I think Tucker Carlson did a report on this a week ago or so, where he talked about there was a agreement on the table for basically Ukraine to agree not to join NATO. I think the territories in the Donbass were up in the air, but Russia would pull out. And it was the Biden administration that that squashed the deal. So I think that your assessment is spot on. I absolutely think that they're trying to steer us to a world war. But what we would do here is, being that the governor has limited international powers, I can assure you that we'll be prepared, from our National Guard to putting in things like a lot of the going back to the European countries. One of the things that they do well is prepare their citizens for fighting, like the Finns and the Swedes. They've got very robust national defense plans that take into account the citizenry. So I think there's a lot of lessons that we could learn there as well.
Yeah, I rolled with the Swedes in Afghanistan. They actually have a pretty sweet chow hall. We would always, if we were out, we're going to go back to our. No, let's go to the Swedish chow hall. That's where the Swedes and the Germans had some pretty good grub. Yeah, they're pretty bad. Yeah. So let's. What are you guys' take on Ohio issue 1 and issue 2? I'm sure you guys have been looking at this a lot.
Yeah. I'll jump in on this. I mean, the fact that we're even having these conversations is it blows my mind. I mean, the fact that should illegal aliens be allowed to vote? No. So educate yourself. Make sure that you understand what way you have to vote on each of the issues to make sure that our conservative views are represented. And the fact that we absolutely have to allow judges to take into account the history of the criminal, the impact on the danger to society. If we don't, then we're going to just rubber stamp the revolving door that we've seen prosecutors put in place already in other cities. So we absolutely have to step up. The good news is, if you see some of the polling, it looks like the polling is showing that we are going to side on the right here. But man, the fact that we're even having these conversations speaks volumes about where we are as a state.
Right. Yeah. Indeed. Mr. Walker, what are your thoughts on issues 1 and 2?
My biggest one on issue 2 is, if it becomes part of the Ohio Constitution, I believe that gives the state a little bit of leverage if the Biden administration comes in and says tomorrow, hey, all illegals can vote in the United States now. So that gives us a part of our Constitution, and that would be a separation of powers, because elections are not delegated to the government to control. It's up to the states to control their own. So that would stop him making an executive order that would override a state constitution, so we could still stop them from voting here and determining who was going to get placed into office. That's the only meat that I see in doing this. I wish they wouldn't have done the wordplay on it. I wish they had just made it plain and simple. Can illegals vote here? Yes or no?
Definitely.
But so you people need to be aware that they need to vote yes on this to get it to stop.
So I live outside of Dayton. Grew up in and around Dayton, Ohio. I believe it was U.S. News and World Report. Don't quote me verbatim, but we were listed, Dayton, as the 5th most deadliest city in the United States. You were former law enforcement, Mr. Walker, and I'm sure, Mr. Usher, you have some type of a idea on how you would handle crime here in the state of Ohio. So I'll just open that up to you guys. I don't want to see Dayton. And you know what? Cincinnati and Cleveland, I think, made the top 10 as well. So it's not looking good for Ohio. What do you guys?
Yeah, there are 3 Ohio cities that broke all-time records for murders last year. And to your point, Dayton was one of the most dangerous in the country. We know what the problem is. It's repeat violent offenders.
Yep.
And the fact that these repeat violent offenders are out there for months on a time with outstanding felony warrants is a travesty. So one easy thing fix that the governor can make instantly is, I want to see the size of the SRT, the state police strategic response or tactical team, tripled. There's 31 members right now, men and women across the state, and I want to see 2/3 of them doing nothing but serving felony warrants by repeat violent offenders for the first however many weeks it takes to get them all off the street. And you'll be seeing perp walks, multiple a day, of these guys getting taken off the street, put behind bars, and hopefully, kept there if we can get them in front of the right prosecutors and judges.
Have you ever watched any, I don't know, press conferences or anything with the sheriff out of Butler County? He seems like a pretty no nonsense sheriff.
Yes.
Would you guys try to bolster up? The sheriff's kind of separate in all of this, but would you kind of bolster up the sheriffs in Ohio and say, "Hey, we got your back, and we'll take care of it. You don't have to worry anymore."
100%. So Shannon, I know you're passionate about this. You want to jump on that?
Yeah, we would 100% back up all law enforcement in the state. Something else that's got to happen too is when these guys get put away, we've got to reform corrections also.
Okay.
We've got to take these things away from being adult daycare camps and turn them back into actual correctional facilities. If people don't feel like they're getting punished, then what's to deter them from doing crimes?
So how do you see that going about?
What is it?
How do you see reforming the correctional institutes?
Well, the first step is getting somebody in charge of them that's actually got some sort of experience in corrections. It's not appointing your buddy that made a huge donation to your campaign to these positions. It goes back to what we was talking about earlier, actually forming a committee and hiring people that are qualified for the job. Because you put somebody in charge of corrections and knows nothing about them, they're not even allowed to refer to them as inmates or convicts now. They have to refer to them, what was it, as I can't remember what it was, but yeah, they completely changed it. You can't even call an inmate an inmate. I mean, these people aren't there for going to church too much.
Right.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on private prisons? I know that's a big thing that folks talk about a lot is private prisons and how it's not good for our justice system. What do you think on private prisons?
Yeah, I'm not a fan. And one of the base or founding things that foundational things that a government should provide is protecting the citizenry, and I just don't think that that's something that should be outsourced.
Yeah.
I think that's a core function of what government should be doing, and those are things that we should be good at. Quite frankly, is we should be good at making sure that we reduce recidivism. Easy for me to say.
Yeah. And I agree with him on that. Now, as far as like your regional jails and stuff where it's temporary housing, I would be completely fine with outsourcing that kind of stuff because it's typically a temporary 2-3 day thing. A lot of times your local jails and stuff are overflowing. So that's the only place that I could even see the private sector even being involved.
There's a couple other things too, right? Correctional reform. I mean, the use of force rule. I mean, they have handcuffed our own correctional officers to where they're going to get somebody hurt or worse. And I want to make sure that those men and women have the ability and the capability to protect themselves. Two, we need to get them paid. There's a lot of them that are still out there that haven't been paid from the COVID hazard pay that they're owed.
Really?
So that's a huge priority that is just being completely overlooked by our current governor. And then I think a big thing, the corrections officers came out in droves to support Joe. So I had a chance to meet a lot of them. And I did not recognize the fact that they are not actually classified as law enforcement in Ohio. They are separate from law enforcement. And there are a lot of benefits that come along with that. So that's one of the things that I'd love to explore as well, is to see, why is that? What would that mean by bringing them over under that blanket? And because I think that it makes a lot of sense to do it at face value. But those are just three things off the top of my head. And then you mentioned sheriffs. I think another thing that the governor has at their disposal is the bully pulpit. And sheriffs are vitally important to protecting our constitutional rights. You had a sheriff that basically had to sign off on a raid at Mar-a-Lago.
Right.
So I will tell you that as governor, I would have a hard time if a sheriff in our state signed off on what everyone knows is a politically motivated raid. The sheriffs are there to protect the Constitution, And we'll make sure that the sheriffs that are elected are doing that, and the ones that aren't doing that, we're going to shine a really bright light on them to make sure that the folks that put them there know exactly who they're representing.
Definitely. So I'll start with you, Mr. Usher. What are your thoughts directly for Mike Dewine and Nan Whaley? We'll just start with Mike Dewine.
So I think, we know what we're going to get from Mike Dewine. And we saw whether it was, we took the trip down memory lane a little bit ago. If we would have went another, 18 months, we would have had video clips of him pushing red flag laws. So, the fact that he runs to the right during campaign season, it's not fooling everyone anymore. There's a lot of patriots like yourselves that have taken to the airwaves to shine a light on it. And you've got guys like Shannon and I that, just are putting our lives on hold for a little while to see if we can do something about it. So I would say I
think you guys are doing a little bit more than that, because it seems like the top echelon really comes down. I know they went hardcore on Mr. Blystone there. And if you step out of line, if you're not one of us and you don't get in line, we're going to come down on you. Yeah. And you guys worked in the Blystone campaign, saw what happened to him, and still stepped up. And I think that's pretty tremendous. I got to say that, because that's brave.
That. And you know what? But it's not even us. I mean, if they come and do the same thing to us, there's going to be 5 more patriots behind us that are going to take the mantle. And we've said this from the beginning. I mean, that's how I kind of see our role in this, is taking that mantle from guys like Joe and Mark Bakita and, the citizen candidates. We're going to run as far as we can with it. We're going to find someone that's better positioned than us. We're going to make that exchange, and then we're going to root them on for the, and let them run it forward. But that's how we're going to make a difference, is by going out there, telling our friends, talking to the people that we don't normally talk to. Beforehand, we were talking before we went live. We talked about a couple of the events we've had over the last few weeks, and we were up in Cleveland at an event downtown, and we were one of we were actually the only right leaning candidate that showed up.
Wow.
A couple of Democrats, another independent. But one of the things that we heard from a lot of folks up there is the people that live here have right-leaning ideology, but the Democrats are the ones that come down and talk to them. So they don't think that the Republicans want their vote. And obviously nothing could be further from the truth. I don't care how much money you have in your pocket or what color your skin is. We're all Americans, and that's we all want the same things. We want good schools and opportunity for good jobs. We want safe streets. I mean, it's pretty fundamental. And if you focus on that kind of stuff, it's a message that's been resonating across the state.
Yeah, I'm an infrastructure guy too. We got to have good roads. They got to be safe, but they got to be good. We got to have bridges that work, water that runs, trash that gets picked up.
So I'm an infrastructure guy too. And, so working at Rolls-Royce, one of the things that people don't realize is in energy, we made a pitch where did you know that most of Ohio is actually closer to a deep water port than Houston, Texas? Whenever you take into account traffic, Mount Vernon, Ohio was closer to a deep water port in Cleveland than you were on the northwest side of Houston, Texas.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we've got a tremendous amount of infrastructure in the state that is completely underutilized. As when I was there when I was at NetJets, I was tapped on the shoulder to lead a project to bring an aerospace maintenance center of excellence to the state. So I partnered with some of the folks from the governor's office, Jobs Ohio, the Edison Welding Institute, EWI. They were going to serve as an incubator. And, one of the things we found, in addition to underutilized infrastructure like the airport out in Youngstown, great access, really good utilities, nothing's happening there. So there's a lot of opportunity that across the state that's underutilized. But the other thing I learned was it has nothing to do with how good the idea is. We were able to put forth an idea that was self-funding within 2 years and would return a portion of proceeds of any intellectual property that was developed out of that center of excellence to the state. And it died on the vine. And it died on the vine because the right people in the room shaking their head the right direction. And, there were other priorities. Well, what other priority could you have that we're going to create 3,500 jobs in a high tech, high growth industry, utilizing assets that are underutilized all across the state? Seems
It's
like a
all
pretty good.
about politics, man.
So, you ask why we're getting into this is once you see how this sausage is made, you've got to do something about it, or you're no better than the next guy, than the politician.
Right. So, what for you, Mr. Walker? So, what do you think about who? I guess we can consider your opposing candidate, who's what's John Husted. How do you feel about him?
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to form an opinion when you never hear, see, or find out about anything the man's done in 4 years.
Right.
Outside of standing behind Dewine during Dewine's little COVID things, and every now and then roll his eyes like he disagreed, but obviously didn't have the guts to stand up and say something if he did.
Right.
He's literally non-existent. You never hear of anything about him.
Yeah, I mean, I look at John Huston's signature effort, right, and that's to reduce the red tape in government. That was what he was tasked with. Is his task force is reducing the red tape in government. How's everyone feel that's working out for us in Ohio? Have you been to the DMV lately? Have you tried to renew a title? So we still have as many licenses as we had before he started that effort. It's I don't know if it's better that he does keep his mouth shut, because whenever he does take on something, he doesn't really seem to get much done.
You don't see or hear anything.
Right.
And
since Whalen's frozen, go ahead.
Well, you brought up Nan Whaley. I mean, and all you've got to do is look at Dayton.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you. I mean,
upstairs.
As a citizen of Dayton, what's your opinion on Nan Whaley?
I'm outside of Dayton.
Okay.
I know a few folks who live in Dayton, and there's pockets of good places. I think they have an issue with their police department. I think they have an issue, just the leadership, where the guys they don't feel like they're empowered anymore. They just, they've been let down. They had a mayor forever, and Nan Whaley, who was out there shouting against them and, playing that political game.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
that's what happened with Dayton. And a lot of the businesses, since, I hate to say it because I'm not a huge fan of Mike Turner because all his Warhawk stuff, but, when he left, businesses started to leave with him, like NCR. NCR was based out of Dayton. Just a lot of different businesses left, and that crushes it. I think the one good thing that's keeping Dayton together is the Dayton Dragons, which came in under Mike Turner when he was mayor of Dayton. So, Republicans do play a pretty good role in politics and driving business and things like that. But at the same time, there needs to be somebody who has that mindset of wanting to bring in business, but at the same time understanding that this country's we the people, for the people, and by the people.
It's wanting to bring in business, but I think this kind of dovetails into a question you asked earlier that we didn't really get to is, what do you think about the leadership in the state? My problem is, it's not about unstacking the deck with them. It's about restacking it on behalf of their team. And I think that's the biggest difference that you see with citizen candidates is I'm not interested. I don't have a team that I need to make sure that they're taken care of, right? I want to make sure that the people of Ohio are taken care of, that my kids are taken care of, that my neighbors are taken care of. Like, that's my team. Like, you folks are my team. Like, so we want to make sure that we are not making backroom deals that are front loading $600 million worth of incentives for Intel to come in. We want to build an environment that is a good business operating environment for everyone. Low taxes, access to labor, access to technology. Graduates that actually know how to think. That's how you build and expand industry in a state. And the other thing is, seeing how Jobs Ohio operates. If you want to build a widget stamping machine, they will give you a collateralized bridge loan for your machine, right? But what they won't do is invest in R&D, or they won't invest much in R&D. They won't invest in startup costs. And the reason they do that is because if you fail, they come in, repossess your widget stamping machine, and then go sell it to the Chinese company that took your business. Well,
Right.
I believe they should take that $300 million that they're sitting on and spend it on, investment in R&D, in high growth, high tech, high capitally intensive industries. That's how you find the next Intel that is headquartered here and not have to pay $600 million to get them to build here.
Right. Rooster, are you still there?
I've been enjoying the interview, but I'm such a lag. We're talking minutes behind. So I will ask one question if you can still hear me.
They're good.
And this is a little bit off topic, but how do you feel about China actually buying up American property? How do you feel about that? Because they've got a bunch of it.
Yeah, that's something that there should be a stop put to, like, immediately. They shouldn't be allowed to come in and buy up our farmland. From what I've read, and I can't say that I can find anything that's 100% rock solid sources, but a lot of this is supposedly around some of the missile silos and stuff like that. And to me, that is national security. So, yeah, there has to be a stop put to that instantly.
So
Well,
is there anything that you can do when you get in to help with that as far as Ohio, or is it bigger than that?
Yeah, no, so there's absolutely. If you look at states like Iowa, they've done a lot to combat this already. Things like requiring a certain percentage of U.S. ownership in any corporation that comes in. Things like limiting the size of the parcels. But to Shannon's earlier point, I think the proximity to some of our national security installations is absolutely a concern. The one that comes to mind, I think 60 Minutes did a special on it last year where they bought a ranch that was right next to the facility where we train a lot of our, I think it's F-22 pilots.
Yep.
But so, yeah, I mean, this is absolutely a problem. On a national security side, we'd make sure that the right folks knew, and we would definitely keep our own eye on them. But yeah, I mean, if you look to other places like Iowa, is probably the best example. There's a lot that we can learn and adopt that would secure our farmland.
Good.
There was something about Huawei, which is a Chinese cell phone manufacturer, and they make components for towers.
Yep.
There was a former CIA agent named Mike Baker who was talking about this, and he was talking that a lot of the American cell phone tower maintenance folks were getting Huawei components, putting them on towers, and they were putting them on towers that were around different military bases. I wonder why they would want components from a Chinese company on cell phone towers near military bases. There was something that happened in 2022 where the United States, they passed a law, the government, and said, we got to take those components down. Well, it turns out it's going to cost billions and billions of dollars to take those components down. So some of them still may be up there today, yet we send 60, 70 billion to Ukraine to fight a proxy war over there.
Right.
Anyway.
Amen, brother.
Speaking of amen, I got a quick question. I hear a lot of different candidates, a lot of different politicians talk about, they'll mention scripture, they'll mention their faith. Do you believe in separating your faith from your politics, or is it part of it?
So let me jump on that one first. No, and I'll tell you why. Because we are a Christian nation. We are founded on Christian values. So that will always play a role in how I think about the laws that should be passed and how we should be governed and whatnot. So that's a foundational part of who we are as a nation. So now, that being said, on specific instances, then yes, I would never let my personal opinion interfere with what I believe was best for the people of Ohio. just so no, you're not electing me to imprint my personal opinion. You're electing me to represent the people of Ohio. And I think that's where we have gone so far off the rails, is that our current leaders represent their corporate interests or whoever's padding their pockets, not the people. And so,
right. What about you, Shannon?
I feel the same way. I believe in the separation of the church and the state, but my religion would play a role in the decisions made for the state, just like the Constitution would. I mean, there's certain things that you don't go against. You're not going to write a bill that's going to go against the Constitution. The beliefs are going to weigh on the decision, but ultimately the decision is always going to be made for the people.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, we're not going to hide the fact that we're a Christian nation.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just have to ask, because usually people try to put a huge wall in between the two. And I just think that if you are a Christian or whatever you are, that's what you base your foundation of your morality around. And that's something that's lacking.
That's exactly right. And, whenever I introduce myself on the road, I always start and say, I'm a Christian and a patriot, husband, father. So we already have, my beliefs in Christianity would then be constrained by the Constitution of the United States. So that is how I see those two playing. But, to say that it would have no role in how we would govern, I mean, there's no way that I could sit here and say that.
Nope.
One quick one to go with that. There's a lot of things considered hate speech anymore. The way that people talk, the way they say things, and it's a woke world anymore. But would you ever consider hate speech? Let me ask you this: say you a Christian nation, you're a Christian. If hate speech was considered part of what you believed, would you still stand on your beliefs? As far as, because the Constitution, people, making laws and different things, would you stand on your faith over the laws that were made?
So I think this is actually a place where the Constitution and our faith are congruent. The Constitution believes in freedom of speech, and call it hate speech. I believe in freedom of speech, no matter how ignorant or ugly it is. I believe, now, whenever you talk about yelling fire in a theater, that's different, right? But, right. Just saying, the beliefs that we have seen, especially the conservative beliefs that we've seen being labeled as hate speech over the last handful of years, is nonsense. It's absolute nonsense.
Right.
I'm with you.
Well, fellas, you've given us an hour of your time. I really appreciate it. Is there anything you want to let folks know who may be watching this video before we head out?
Shannon?
Yeah, sure. One final thing. People want to vote for us. When they go to the polls, they need to ask for a list of the write-in candidates, and the polling location must provide that to them. And we recommend copying down the names verbatim whenever you mark the write-in candidate spot.
Mr. Usher?
Yep. So I would encourage you to go to our website, usherforohio.com, if you have any other questions on the policies. We've got a very lean organization. So, pro tip, if you hit the info button, it goes to me. So you'll be getting a reply directly from the candidate. But no, I would say the one thing that I would leave you with is, as a patriot, as a conservative in this state, what's your red line? And, we have all been walked up to our red line, and I will tell you that, at least for the Shannon and I, it's been crossed. And if your red line has been crossed, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to stand up and pay attention enough to go in and write someone's name down who will represent your interests? Or are you going to hold your nose and vote for Mike Dewine out of, fear of the lesser of two evils? The fact that we've got a majority in this state that will vote for their abuser because they feel that he will be less abusive to them in the future I find fascinating. So I would ask you to do some soul searching. Ask yourself, what's your red line? What do you stand for? And if you decide that Mike Dewine has crossed it and Nan Whaley's not the answer, then check out Marshall Usher and Shannon Walker, and I will assure you that you'll get two candidates that are going to make the decisions in the best interest of the folks of Ohio.
So I'm reading a lot through social media. Just real quick, I'm sorry. I know I was going to let you go. And they're talking about splitting the vote. For me,
Good.
I'll just say for me, I wasn't voting for Mike Dewine. I wasn't going to vote for Nan Whaley. I'm looking, there's quite a few write-ins. I'm looking for somebody I can vote for. If I vote for somebody that's not Nan Whaley or Mike Dewine, it doesn't mean I'm going to elect Nan Whaley. No, I didn't vote for Nan Whaley. I'm voting for somebody else.
Right.
Not Nan Whaley. If she wins, on her. If he wins, on him. But I think these two folks are going to win, Marshall Usher and Shannon Walker. What do y'all think about the split the vote?
That's a great point. And actually, I did a post about that on our website and on our Facebook site a couple weeks ago, maybe a week ago. But if you look at the Emerson poll that was released a couple weeks ago, Mike Dewine has a 50% lead and Nan Whaley's at 32%. So two takeaways real quick. One is there's room to vote your conscience. And the other thing is if everybody or even half the people that said, I can't stand Mike Dewine, but I'm so afraid of having Nan Whaley would vote for us, we would win this thing going away. Because everybody knows that Mike Dewine is not the answer. But that's why I said, do the research. If you decide that we're your team, you get one vote. You can't split one vote unless you're using machines. That's for another podcast.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on tonight. I appreciate all your time, and good luck going forward. November 8th is election day.
Marshall, Shannon, you can't see this because I'm on a 10-minute delay, but my hands are in the air, fist bump. I'm voting for you guys. Dewine's out. So you got my support 100%.
Appreciate you guys. Definitely. Thanks for having us on. The pleasure was ours. And get out the vote. Tell your neighbors. Tell your friends.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.